On April 2nd, 1982, a team of Argentine Marines mounted an assault on Stanley, the capital of the Falkland Islands. Despite a spirited attempt to maintain control by the small company of Royal Marines stationed there, along with the local Falkland Islands Defence Force, the Argentine forces took control. Their first stop was the local radio station, where Falkland Islands radio presenter Patrick Watts was forced to play a tape at gunpoint.
Well, the radio station has now been taken over. I still hope that we can get His Excellency the Governor's message to you. Just a minute. If you take the gun out of my back, I'm going to transmit that news. If you take the gun away. But I'm not speaking with the gun in my back.
Back in the UK, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher confirmed the news to a shocked nation.
British sovereign territory has been invaded by a foreign power. The large task force will sail as soon as all preparations are complete.
The early hours of preparing that task force saw members of the British military being recalled from leave, ready to be mobilised immediately. Aidan Forbes, who retired to the Isle of Man, was, at the time, serving as a private with the 2nd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment.
I think they must have had... We always had a recall mechanism of a telegram that would send the name of your barracks back. And because I'm a terrible writer, I'd spelt it wrong. So I knew it wasn't a hoax. It came back. It was Bruneville Barracks, and I'd stuck a U in it or a V in it or something. So anyway, I received the telegram and just knew we had to report straight back to barracks within 24 hours.
So you headed back to Aldershot. Presumably at that stage, it was a case of getting your own personal kit together and making sure you were battle ready.
We were meant to be going to Belize in Central America. That tour had been cancelled, and we were pulled into Spearhead Battalion and started assembling the equipment that we were going to need for the actual operation.
And things, in the meantime, you were presumably watching the news and hearing what was happening, thinking maybe you will be going, maybe you won't be going. I think that there was a general feeling at the time that this probably wouldn't amount to much, and you might not even get as far as Portsmouth.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, okay, Paras, we're not exactly, most of us aren't exactly well educated. We all thought, what was Argentina invading a little island off Scotland? I mean, it was just insane. And then we looked it up and we found out where it was, and it was quite a long way to go. And how are we going to get there? How are we going to parachute in and everything? And anyway, as events unfolded, we went on a different method of insertion.
So you got yourself down to Portsmouth, or they took you down to Portsmouth. The next thing, you're being sort of loaded onto a ship, onto the MV Norland. What was your thought process? What were the boys thinking at that stage?
It was all gung-ho. We're all ready to go. We didn't actually take our band with us, but our band was on the quayside to see us off, playing Don't Cry For Me Argentina, of course, which was a big hit at the time.
So 8,000 miles to the Falklands, but there was a stop en route at Ascension Island, which presumably gave you a bit of a chance to get things in order. Yeah,
our sister battalion, the 3rd Battalion, they'd sailed before us and they'd got down there, and a lot of the naval ships, obviously, they were all ready to go. We turned up and there was a lot of cross-decking, moving equipment between various ferries and civilian vehicles that have been vessels that have been requisitioned. So there was a bit of chaos there, and when we found out that we were going to be inserted by a landing craft, they brought a landing craft alongside the Norland. We all donned big orange life preservers and climbed into it and have a trip round the bay. That was our only experiences of being in a landing craft.
And Ascension, if people don't know Ascension Island, it is quite a sort of tropical paradise, very different to where you were going to ultimately end up. So that must have been quite a pleasant experience.
I think more for the 3rd Battalion. They were there for about a week, and a lot of the Marine units. We arrived, like I say, trip round the bay and get back on, and we were off. We didn't actually land on the island.
You then set sail for the South Atlantic. It's hard to imagine because we're in 2022 and nowadays people have got iPads and phones, and there's a way, even at sea, of keeping in contact with news and family and everything else. How did you guys know what was happening?
We had a newsletter that was passed around briefings from the officers, and we had a high frequency radio 320 that if you turned it onto the UHF band, and we used to be able to pick up BBC World Service, so we could hear what was going on through the military radio that way.
And you needed a friendly radio operator for that, which is where you came in handy, I guess.
Well, yeah, I was a very popular man at that time with the being HF trained, yeah.
From some of the other people I've spoken to who were down there at the time, there was still a feeling, even when you set sail from Ascension on that last part of the journey, the second and final part of the journey, that it might not actually come to anything. There would be this political solution, and the ship would then turn round, and you'd come back and carry on with your leave or whatever. Was that your experience, or?
Yeah, I think right up until the moment when the Belgrano was sunk, that we all thought that there was going to be a political solution. I mean, it was an insane war, but when you look at it, there's basically British people being invaded by a foreign country. It might be 8,000 miles away, but these people were as British as we are. And we up until that moment, we were sure there'd be a joint sovereignty solution. But once the Belgrano went down with that loss of life, I think, it was for real then.
And then you get within 200 miles. There was a 200-mile exclusion zone around the Falklands. As you started approaching, this is now becoming very real.
Yeah. I mean, we've been training on survival, on weapon training, and medical training. A lot of medical training going on.
What was your first sight of the Falkland Islands? When was the first time you physically saw the islands?
We were quite a way off to start with, and we moved in closer. There was around the landing position, there was a place called Fanning Head. That was getting shelled up by the Royal Navy, and we learned out later there was an SAS patrol up there sorting out the people that were on there. So we mounted into our landing craft through the side door. There was no special way. It was quite a big swell. We lost one guy with a fractured pelvis who got caught between the landing craft and the boat. And you've got to remember that we were going up ashore with full battle kit, so...
How much is that weighing? What are we talking?
Minimum for an infantry guy, one of the grunts in a rifle company, he'd be carrying about 10 stone. As a radio operator, I was carrying my own weight, so I'd be about 12 stone.
I mean, that's just incredible, because it's hard enough moving between a ship and a landing craft at sea with the swell that's going on, but you're carrying effectively another guy on your back.
Yeah. And they gave us the lovely thing as just as we were getting onto the landing craft, the mortar platoon gave us 2 mortar rounds to carry on as well. So we actually went up a little bit heavier than that.
You were landed eventually at a place called Blue Beach, which is near San Carlos. And there was a famous instruction or a famous piece of advice that was given. Did you get that as well, about how deep the water was going to be?
Oh yeah, we've all seen the old movies, Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne charging ashore and onto these lovely sandy beaches. Anyway, we had TAC 1, which was Colonel Jones behind us, was with B Company, and the ramp went down. We were all waiting to run ashore. And there was quite tall ramps on these landing craft, and it just disappeared into the water. We all looked at it, and the loadmaster on, I presume, whatever the Marines call him, he shouted, "Troops out." And we all looked at him and thought, no, we're not going into that, mate. You can't see the bottom. So anyway, at the back, Jones shouted, "Red on, go!" And all, as World Paras, that's our signal to jump. So we all ran off this thing into this water that came up with my chest, and my mate Stu, who was even shorter than me, we were having to hold his head above water to get him onto a certain point where we could actually wade ashore, streaming with kit, with water pouring out of everything. And
you've still got 10, 12 stone on your back at this point, and
you
don't know what you're going into.
No, we met the SBS guys on the beach. And they all, standard joke, I presume. We all thought you were going to come tomorrow, but they were all waiting for us. So,
was it dark as well? We just under the cover of darkness.
Yeah. It was. We'd gone in a cover of darkness, and of course, everything had got wet, so your weight limit's gone up. Yeah, we dropped off the mortar bombs, and we were deployed to the top of Sussex Mountain, which was a 3-mile hike uphill from Blue Beach.
You use the word hike. Now, the Marines use the word yomp. Used in the Paras, it's tabbing. What does tab stand for?
Tactical Advance to Battle.
So you tabbed to the top of Mount Sussex. What were you feeling at that stage? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, the sun was coming up. Normally, after a couple of miles, the sun was coming up, and we still had a mile to go.
Suponemos casi a la zona de Malvinas.
We could hear aircraft moving around, and we knew there was no air defence up. The Argentinians used a twin-engine ground attack plane called the Picara. The SAS patrols that were out in front of us, they managed to bring them down with an American Stinger ground-to-air missile. So, yeah, we had that one go down, and then we just continued up to the top of the hill and came up there and tried to dig trenches. Water table was far too high, so we got down about a foot, and the water just started rising. So we built sangers, made out of stone and peat, and we sat up there for a few days.
And it's pretty unforgiving. The territory, if you think of North Barrule and places like that, there's not much to dig into. It gets very rocky and bouldery and scree slopes and stuff. It's not the most pleasant environment, and with the wind howling around, it must have been pretty foul conditions.
Yeah. I mean, I was quite lucky because I was a radio operator. So, yeah, my stag position was beneath the wind, but the lads on the top were exposed to it for getting on for a week before we moved off from there. And, one of the things that doesn't get talked about as much is the amount of weather casualties we had. If you can imagine after the landing that we didn't have time to change socks, didn't have time to change clothing. So once we got up to the top, then it's all round defence. So guys have been in wet socks for, 12, 20 hours before you can even start looking after yourself. So, at the end of the battle, at the end of the war, we'd lost some of our best soldiers through weather casualties and through the terrible boots that the British Army issued to us at that time.
And we talk about weather casualties, and certainly that side of it I'd not heard before. But on the flip side of that, some of the advances in medical science were made by the fact that it was so cold, and some of the casualties, it's thought, survived because it was so cold, and we're sort of given an extended chance because of that. Yeah,
I definitely know that for a fact. I ended up in our RAP, our regimental age post, at one point. And, we were looking after a guy who'd been shot through the kidney. He showed every sign of dying. And, later on when we got back to Aldershot, he was there, still alive. Lost a kidney, but, should have bled to death. But the freezing conditions kept him alive.
And, of course, Commander Rick Jolly, the Navy surgeon who had the facility, the Red and Green Life Machine, as it became known at Ajax Bay, just incredible. The theory was, basically, if you made it there alive, you were going to leave there alive as well. Yeah. My mate Denzel, who lost a leg from 3-para, he talked to one of the surgeons later, and to keep him alive through the lack of blood and the loss of blood he got, the surgeon actually had blisters on his fingers from re-inflating, like the respirator ball, to just keep blood and oxygen pumping around Denzel's body. I mean, these guys were amazing. Absolutely incredible stuff. So you're at the top of the Sussex Mountain. What happened next for you in terms of the battle? Yeah, the nearest outpost of the Argentinian forces was a place called Goose Green. It's about 10 miles away. It's a little settlement at the end of an isthmus. The isthmus is about 3 miles long, 1 mile wide. We were tasked to go down there on a raid. The raid fell through, and next we knew it was a full battalion assault into Goose Green. So moved on down to Goose Green. Lost guys again through walking across the tussocky grass, various other things as we got down, and we reorged in a house. Burnside or Camilla, I think it's Burnside House,
and we laid up there during the day, waiting for the go to go in that night. And during that night, we had the famous BBC announcement,
Robert
we
Fox.
heard. Yeah, well, no, this came from BBC World Service that said a parachute battalion is waiting to attack Goose Green. It was a leak from Whitehall or from the government. No one's ever said who did it.
Now, I can tell you a bit more about that, because there was a guy called Christopher Lee, not the actor, a journalist called Christopher Lee, who still works for the FBS. He was briefed at Westminster that the attack was going to happen on Goose Green. He said, is this on the record or off the record? There being a massive difference between the two things. And they said, no, this is on the record. So he reported it, of course. And Robert Foxy's Oppo was sitting down with you guys, dogging, waiting for the next morning. He must have been Mr. Popular that night, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. I do believe the Colonel Jones was saying that heads would roll when he got back to the UK. But thanks for letting me know about that.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah, I'm meeting all the lads in June, so I'll let them know who they've got responsible for.
It was Christopher Lee who told me that story himself, so it's true, it's fine, it's on record there. No. So then the attack on Goose Green itself, and we should point out that Goose Green at the stage, did you know that there were Falkland Islands being held in the village community centre at Goose Green?
I've no recollection of that, but I presume that, it must probably higher up. Normally I'd get to know that through being a radio operator, but I had no recognition of that. I do know that they severely underestimated the amount of people that were in Goose Green, the amount of Argentinian forces. I mean, even for a parachute battalion to take on 3 times their number, which it was in the end, is beyond all recognition. It's just never been done. And I do believe the Sunday Telegraph or the Sunday Times, they checked the 20 greatest battles the British Army has ever fought. And number 20, they say that Goose Green was one of the greatest battles the British Army ever fought. So, I'm privileged to have survived that one.
Somebody who didn't survive was a chap you mentioned earlier on, the boss, Colonel H. Jones, who sadly lost his life there along with a number of other people. How did that affect morale, or was it just a case of we've got a job to do, we'll keep pushing on?
Yeah, by that time we were meant to be fired in by a Royal Navy ship that was going to support our artillery. We had limited artillery. I think we had half a battery, so 3 guns. And our motor platoon, that was our fire support. And apart from that, we relied on ourselves, our support company, our machine gun platoons. But basically, we just relied on probably the most devastating weapon that the British Army's ever invented, which is a parachute battalion.
You say, and you've got a smile on your face, but it's so true, because there's rivalry within the forces, but the Paras have got a reputation for a damn good reason. Yeah,
I mean, when you think about our training, by the time a platoon will pass out, you might start off that platoon with 36 men, if we can get 6 guys from that platoon. And you've got to remember, these guys have already been selected to be available for parachute training and for a parachute battalion. So you end up in once you've got through that training, you've got your red beret, you've got your wings, and you go into probably one of the most violent peacetime places you could ever imagine, which is a parachute battalion at peace, because there's so much testosterone and everything going around. And then you take that battalion and you put it in a war situation. Its capacity for generating violence is unbelievable.
But it's controlled, and it's there to do a job. We're not just talking random acts and whatever. It's very much, you're there to do that job.
Yeah. I mean, we bring our training and our weapons to bear on inflicting our will on the enemy. So
Goose Green ebbed and flowed. It was getting light. There were various people, I've spoken to guys who were stuck in the re-entrant where H. Jones was sadly killed, who were talking about the fact that the light was coming in, and they were now panicking because you were under sort of severe pressure and under fire and stuff. How did you turn that round? Was it just that force of the guys doing the job? Yeah,
we if you can imagine, you're looking at a mile-wide battlefront. The battalion had normally advanced with 2 companies up So we had A Company on the left, B Company on the right, and D Company in reserve. We also have a patrols platoon and a recce platoon and the support company. We'd already been fighting all night. We took through a lot of enemy positions, but timings were slipping. A Company on the left, as I said earlier, I was with B Company. A Company on the left were approaching Darwin Hill, and it was getting light. We'd reorged. You always reorg at first light. Get everyone together, and we advanced. A Company came across, dug in positions on the main Argentinian defence line. Took severe casualties, actually moving to the dead ground beneath Darwin Hill. And and things ebbed and flowed, as you said, for a while. And Jones took it on himself to get a small party, mainly of officers, together, and to go right flanking around this re-entrant. And unfortunately, he died there. B Company on the right that I was with, we were advancing down a hill that was like a bowling ball, and a billiard table, and we got absolutely malleted from a hedge line. He went down into a valley, came up the other side, and the Argentinians just opened up on us. They took casualties all the way at that time, and we withdrew back into dead ground at the top. At that time, we were trying to look at a way of outflanking the enemy. So if you can imagine, the sea was on our right. I remember moving into an area, a rocky area, and I think a mortar bomb must have gone up quite close to me. I lost a bit of time then, but I remember sitting in the RAP with my officer, Captain Young. He was quite severely wounded. I think I must have got a bit of concussion and a minor, very minor, shell splinter in my leg. I just remember staying with him and treating a few of the wounded there. At that time, we'd lost Colonel Jones, and our 2IC, Chris Keeble. He brought up our machine gun platoon, which was obviously behind, and Milan platoon, which was our anti-tank platoon, and we used the suppressing fire of the machine guns, and we fired the rocket-guided missiles into Argentinian bunkers and trenches, and we destroyed their line that way. D Company came up from reserve. A Company was pretty much shot up by then, and D Company did a right flanking down the beach and rolled up the positions from there. And then we brought C Company in to move through A Company. They advanced over the top, and you could see Goose Green from there. And the Argentinians opened up with everything they had. They had some 30mm cannons, 20mm cannons, 105 artillery, and they hammered us as we moved down the slopes. All we'd managed to do, we'd gone through the main Argentinian defence line, but we'd most probably fought through 300 or 400 of their men. We still had 11 or 1,200 to go. C Company advanced down towards the Argentinian defences around Goose Green, and B Company, we moved round to the right. I should explain that C Company is our patrols and recce platoons. So we've got two understrength platoons moving forward alongside elements of D Company that have come through as well. We moved with B Company, and we moved right flanking. There was an airfield, and we took out the Argentinian 30mm and 20mm cannons that were up there, and we continued round to the right, outflanking Goose Green. D Company and C Company, they'd advanced further onwards, and and night started to fall then. So we withdrew and sat in positions at that point.
Just waiting had the chance to regroup and go again.
Go again the next day. The next day, our patrols and D Company basically stood still. B Company, we moved further around to the right, and that's when they started hitting us with the Pucaras, with the napalm.
This is the aircraft.
They came in with a Pucara with an underslung load and dropped it on D Company.
This is napalm. Now, I think this is one of the things that people don't realise in the Falklands War, that the Argentine forces used what is a banned weapon against you.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just that. I mean, they had rockets underslung that would be mounted onto Mirages and other aircraft on children's slides at Goose Green, that they were firing from those. But yeah, they dropped the napalm at us, and the lads understandably took it out on the aircraft, shot the aircraft down. The pilot got out, and as he floated down, the guys were taking pot shots at him, and Major Neame, to his full credit, I mean, we're all paras. There's a poor guy in a bloody parachute coming down. He might have just dropped napalm on you. So he shouted, "Stop shooting at that man!" And everybody stopped, and he was took prisoner.
Yeah.
But the long and short of this was that that Pucara was still in the air and still flying. By this time, B Company, we'd advanced right round to the back of Goose Green, and I was in a sunken road about 600 metres away from the settlement. We were under quite intense fire there. And we looked round and we saw this flaming aircraft coming round, and we're going, no, yes! And it bounced. It hit the ground about 200 metres from me, bounced back up into the air and shot over the sunken road, and showering us in avgas, the fuel. Fuel. And God knows how we weren't all incinerated and bounced across. And I remember just looking up and seeing this thing bouncing over my head and just thinking, it can't get any worse.
This is not a good day at the office, is it?
No. So we're laying in there absolutely soaked in avgas, and my mate Whiskey Will, who was with me at the time, went to light a fag up. I said, if you like that, we are dead.
I mean, it's a natural reaction, but not now, fella.
Yeah, we just survived that. God knows how. So anyway, we pulled back to our position. There was no way we could outflank them. We checked that out. So we pulled back to our positions, and that's when Colonel Keeble come up with the idea of sending in a couple of NCOs, their senior NCOs that we captured during the night, and just saying, you're surrounded, and if you don't surrender, we're going to come in and we'll sort
Finish
you out
the job.
in the morning. Yeah. And by then, I think that's the first time I knew about the civilians actually in Goose Green, because they were. He said, you would be responsible for the deaths of these people, and I'm thinking, I never knew there was civvies in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, luckily enough, they went in, and they came back with the answer, yeah, we will surrender. So we were looking where we were on this slight rise. We could look down into Goose Green, and we saw quite a few people coming out, marching away, a band playing. They got harangued by their officers, and they all undid their weapons and threw them on the ground and took the helmets off. And we thought, wow, God, there's loads of them. And then their Argentinian Air Force came out. And there must have been 700 or 800 of them, and they walked out, and they all took the weapons off and threw their helmets down. And we just thought, oh, God, thank God they didn't decide to fight. Because we were on our chin straps. We'd been fighting for 2 days. We were out of ammunition. We're using, a lot of us we were on to captured Argentinian ammunition by then. A lot of us had, I know I liberated a pair of Argentinian boots and various things. Yeah, it was...
well, they're not going to need them again at that point. You do. So.
Well, some of them, unfortunately, ended up with our boots.
They got the worst end of the deal.
Yeah.
They definitely got the worst end of the deal.
Yeah.
So the battle for Goose Green has been won, but that's far from the end, isn't it, for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so we're looking at 28th, 29th of May, and the final surrender wasn't until the 14th of June. So we moved into Goose Green, liberated the civilians, stayed there for a few days, and then we had we came up with the idea that we needed to find out where the Argentinians were. I mean, if you've got to remember, we're moving around on the right flank, and on the left flank they've got the Marines and three para moving up, advancing that way into towards Stanley, and you've got our special forces fighting in the mountains in the middle between us. We moved forward to a place called Swan Inlet House with a couple of small helicopters, and we landed and we went in, picked up a telephone and rang up the next settlement, which was Fitzroy, and said, are there any Argentinians there? I mean, this is
surreal nowadays.
It is
yeah.
crazy.
With satellite imagery and goodness knows what else, but this is what you were doing.
Yeah. So we rang them up and they said, oh no, they've just left. So we went, okay, nice one. So we flew back to Goose Green and we commandeered we'd lost most of our helicopter lift.
Because the Atlantic conveyor had been sunk by then, so you'd lost all of the heavy lift, the Chinooks and everything else that would have made it easier, I guess.
Yeah. And I think we had one Chinook left. Bravo November, a very famous one. It's the airframe's still flying, but I think it's like Trigger's broom.
No original bits, yeah.
No original bits at all in it, but it's still got the original call sign. So, we commandeered that, and I think we managed to set the limit for what that poor old thing could take. I think we had 120 guys fully loaded in the back of that. And, that rolled... That
would not want to have been the air loadmaster that day.
No, well, he was going to get overruled, whatever. I mean, he wasn't going to stop us. We wasn't walking that far again. No. We'd had enough. So, it couldn't do a vertical takeoff. It had to do a rolling takeoff to actually get itself into the air. And we flew forward and we took over Fitzroy. So we advanced 20, 30 miles down the coast.
Fitzroy, of course, is the scene where the Sir Tristram and the Sir Galahad were sunk with the loss of life of the Welsh Guards. Had that already happened by that stage?
No, we moved in Fitzroy. We took shelter in first of all, we moved out into the surrounding areas. We defended that area, dug trenches, and rotated back through Fitzroy, getting a bit of rest. There were some sheep shearing sheds there, so it took us out the wind. And
because anyone that's not been, I mean, the wind can be ferocious on the Isle of Man, but in the Falklands, it's something different, isn't it? The wind there. I was there for 2 years in the late 90s, and I think if you added together all of the non-windy days we had over those 2 years, you'd get less than a week.
Yeah, and in May, you've got to remember it's their winter.
Yeah.
So there was snow on the ground, there was frost every day. My feet were playing me up terribly. So at one point I was in Kelpers, one of the local houses, and he'd run a hot bath for us. I think I was about fourth through it, and my feet swelled up like you wouldn't believe. So actually, to get my boots back on, I had to go outside and put them in cold water to get the swelling down.
Yeah.
But it was just, I mean, it sounds insane now, the amount of pain I was going through with my feet. But there was no way you're going to let it defeat you. So, anyway, that was a minor thing for me. The worst thing was that the 5th Infantry Brigade had come down to relieve us. I'd sent round two of our 2 ships, the Galahad and Tristan. They're full of Welsh Guardsmen, and Argentinians still had observation posts. Could see the masts and the funnels from one of the observation posts, and sent in a flight of planes, and blew them up, causing horrendous casualties to the Welsh Guards.
Including Simon Weston, who's been here to the island a few times as well himself.
Simon and a few others. We had a makeshift range going at the time, and the guys went down onto the beach and pulled the guys ashore.
So from Fitzroy, what then for you?
We were flown forward again. They got some more planes in. We basically thought we were, after Goose Green, we were a pretty depleted force. We moved forward to a place into the outer defence rings around Stanley. and we supported our brother battalion, the 3rd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, on their assault on Longdon. Now, 3 Para took Longdon with horrendous casualties. I think they lost 21 dead and 50 or more wounded in the assault, and because they were the first people to take the high ground, one of the high ground around, they were subjected to terrible shelling. We were on the reverse slope. We were going to move up the next day and the next night and go into our second battle, which was Wireless Ridge, but 3 Para just had to sit up there on the hill and take it. And of course, these are Argentinian positions we're moving into. All their bunkers, all their trenches have been ranged, DF'd by their artillery. So they also had a 155 artillery piece there that it absolutely tore them lads to bits up there. That night we moved up. We went in on our second major battle, Wireless Ridge. We'd been underprepared and underarmed, undersupported for Goose Green, and our new commander, Chandler, had come in, our new colonel, and he said he'd never send us in again without support. So we had Scorpions and Scimitar light armoured tanks, and they fired us in. We had artillery. I think we had 2 regiments on call. We had naval ships, and we assaulted across a huge bowl. D Company took the brunt of it this time. They moved around to another right flanking move, came in against the Argentinians, and unfortunately we had a fire gun controller who didn't believe we were moving that fast, and called a salvo down on the D Company, and lost my mate Dave Parr through that. But accident of war.
Losing friends, colleagues, comrades through enemy action in a war is one thing. Losing them through effectively blue on blue, that sort of friendly fire, that must be extra hard to take.
At the time, we didn't know. It came out later. I think the lads at the time knew it was. The lads from D Company. We were with our own battle. Anyway, it is hard to take. Looking back on it, it's senseless. It happens in every war I think we've ever fought, and even Afghanistan. It's still happening now. It's one of those things that do happen. I can't see if you're going to put humans into positions where red hot shrapnel and bullets can hit you. If it's yours or theirs, in the end, it doesn't really make much difference.
So we're back. Just to give a little bit of context to this, Port Stanley, as it's sometimes called still by the press, is the capital of the Falkland Islands. It's surrounded by a ridge of hills, Wireless and Tumbledown and Caroline and the others. Where are you now? Are you at Wireless still?
We've just moved through. We've taken Wireless Ridge, and we can see Stanley. We can see the lights of Stanley. We can see C-130 Hercules is still landing on the runway that they promised us had been taken out. We can see the Argentinians retreating as the dawn came up. We're calling artillery and naval gun support down onto the guys as they were retreating. We were counter-attacked there by A Company of the 2nd Battalion of the Argentinian Parachute Regiment. It was bizarre. Yeah, we fought those. Our D Company fought those guys off. And then we got the thing that they were suing for surrender. So then it was off came the helmets, on went the Red Berets, and we did a massive run into Stanley down the main road. A and B Company B Company, we went round right flanking through the artillery positions just to mop those up, make sure there was no one hanging around. And A Company and D Company, C Company went straight down the middle of the road and into Stanley. where we, first troops into Stanley, first ashore, first to fight 2 battles. Yeah.
And first into Stanley, what did it feel like at that stage? Because you know that all this preparation, all this stuff you've gone through is coming to a conclusion, and at some point you're going to be able to go home, obviously. But what did it feel like at the time?
It's relief. It really is relief. It's just, oh God, I can put this bloody rucksack down. I can take my boots off and not worry about having to try and force them back on again. And and let's see if we can find some decent food, because we've been living on compo for 3 weeks. Apart from one time in Fitzroy where they'd given us the islanders had given us a beautiful sheep stew, which went through every one of us like toast.
Because you're not used to that food. It's not compo. It's not going to last.
No, it was terrible.
What was Stanley like? I'm presuming it was pretty shot up at that stage and pretty messy.
Yeah, the outskirts were. Unfortunately, again, with one of our, I don't know whether it was artillery or it would have been one of our artillery strikes, had killed 2 of the locals. But yeah, we moved into Stanley. It was full of Argentinian, Panhard armoured cars, supply dumps, weapons, everything you could imagine. It was just stacked up, and to a paratrooper, all their weapons and everything. It was like a toy shop, wasn't it? So, yeah.
We know since in the stuff that's come out from the Argentine side that many of those people that were left there would have been conscripts, some of whom didn't even know they were going to war. Apparently they were told they were going off on exercise to Ushuaia, taken off on a Herky, landed in the Falklands, and then said, "This is the Malvinas, we're at war." You've gone from that feeling of fighting them and obviously doing the job that you were down there to. They must have looked pretty dejected and stuff. What were you feeling toward them at that stage?
It's hard to start loving your enemy after what you've just been through. We took various work parties, and we moved them into like the school and that to clean up the mess they'd left. It's okay. They might have been conscripts, and some of them were good soldiers. Some of them were very good soldiers. I mean, at Goose Green, we had some of their special forces that we'd captured. And inside the berries, they all had a 9mm round sewn into the berry. And I says, "What that for?" He says, "Oh, rather than surrender, we kill ourselves." So we had bloody 45 of them in this pen.
Wow.
So, they were professional soldiers. A lot of them were trained by, they had been American trained. We came across some of their snipers were brilliant, and one of them had an American accent. They found out later he wasn't a mercenary, but
That was the Argentine forces that you came across. What about the locals? What was the reaction of the Falkland Islanders that saw you at that stage, and once they realised they could come back out onto the streets?
Oh yeah, it was brilliant, absolutely superb. As we say, it's just like going into a little town in the Cotswolds or somewhere. They had an almost Devon accent, which was amazing, and it was just beautiful, and they were just so happy to see us, and it was how an Argentinian can have a claim on an island when the population's been there for so long and still speaks in a Devon accent, and there's no Hispanic or there's no influence down there apart from British influence. It's a bizarre claim. I think maybe because it's on the same continental shelf, but that's the only way I can see that Argentinians have a claim on that place.
We'll come back to that in a second. So how long did you spend there then before you were sort of shipped back home?
I think we were there for a week or so. Our ship, the MV Norland, was used to transport the prisoners back to Argentina. Came back again, and when they were moving us back, they thought it was wise to put both parachute battalions together rather than
risk mixing them with the bootnecks.
Yes, it was. So they put 2 and 3 para together back onto the Norland, and as we were sailing back, we had every year we have an Airborne Forces Day when the commemoration of when the Parachute Regiment was formed. And it's normally a wild do, but that was most probably some of the hardest fighting we had to do. Was 2 and 3 para on the MV Nolan coming back. Yeah.
It must have also been a surreal time, because it must have been the first time in months that you'd had a chance to actually stop and think where your life was and what you'd gone through.
Yeah, it was. I think we're just all looking so forward to getting home. It just seemed to have gone on so long, and we really needed to decompress. It was, just get us home. Let's get out. I need a beer. I need to go and see my girlfriend. I've had enough. Maybe it wasn't the best idea letting us loose as soon as we got back to the UK. I think when the guys do tours of Iraq or Afghanistan, they sit them for a week in Cyprus and let them...
Bloodhound camp near Limassol.
Talk to them, But we ended up with a lot of cases of PTSD through just letting the guys loose at the end.
Because you'd gone from one thing, you were literally fighting for your life, fighting alongside your comrades, fighting the enemy, to suddenly being dropped off in Portsmouth and see you later, fellas. Yeah.
We never got the magical sailing to Portsmouth, unfortunately. The Northern took us to Ascension, and they put us on some planes and flew us back into Bryce Norton, and wandered off, and our families were there to pick us up. And later on we watched the Canberra and the fleet coming back in, but the Norland had to go back down there to look after put new troops ashore, and I think the Norland stayed down there for another 6 months to a year.
You've been back down there as a fantastic organisation, SAMA, the South Atlantic Medal Association. You've been back to the Falklands. How did you find that all those years later?
Again, it's still the welcome of the Falkland Islanders. They really can't do enough for you. They'll take the time off. They'll take you out wherever you want to go. We went back to Goose Green, walked from the start line to actually into Goose Green. Had a good drink with him, and met the farmer at Goose Green, and he says, "How come that all the time I'm out there, I'm finding left-hand gloves?" And we're going, "Well, when you're taking out a position, what you do is you grab a grenade and you go to pull the grenade pin out, and of course you can't do it with a left-hand glove. So if most guys are right-handed, you take your glove off, meaning to pick it up later. But of course, once the thing goes bang and you're assaulting through the positions, you've lost your glove."
Is that Jen?
Yes, this is Jen. So I actually presented to the farmer. I had a set of Northern Ireland combat gloves that we wore down there, and he says I gave him a right-hand glove to go with all the left-hand ones.
Fantastic! How cool is that? That's brilliant.
I gave him the left-hand one as well because it was no good to me.
And they are, having spent the 2 years there that I was fortunate to do, they are the most patriotically British, and what you guys did in '82 will never ever be forgotten.
Yeah. Margaret Thatcher Way, and
the hospital with the Union Jack painted on the top, and
yes, everywhere. I mean, we have PTSD sufferers that will go down with SAMA. They get concessionary flights through the RAF, through the government as well. And every time we go back, it's just like, they are just so grateful still. It's 40 years on, and I mean, I can't think of anywhere else where the British Army served, where people are just still so grateful for going down and liberating them.
You eventually settled here on the Isle of Man. I always say to people who've spent time in the Falklands, military friends, they say, "What's it like on the Isle of Man?" I say, and I mean this as a compliment, it's the Falkland Islands on steroids.
Yeah.
Because the scenery is just as spectacular. It's fantastic. The sea, the cliffs, the mountains, but there are nicer restaurants and bars and everything else here. I think that's a fair description. But what was it that attracted you to to come and live on the Isle of Man after all that?
I'm a biker. I ride with the Moddy Do, part of it. It's just a place to be. It's just the friendliness of the place, and it's an island. It just it's insular and it's safe, and it's a beautiful place to live. And I couldn't dream of living anywhere else.
Do you ever find yourself, I certainly do, if I'm out by myself for a walk or something and walking up South Barrule or whatever, thinking this could be the Falkland Islands?
Yeah, especially up on some of the terrain up on the flatlands, up on the top, between the mountains, and you're walking over tussocky grass. We used to call them babies' heads down there because they were the worst thing in the world to try and walk over, because you break ankles and you twist your knees all times. And you try doing that with 12 stone on your back.
Not easy. Falklands at 40, Aidan, right now, looking back on your time, would you do it again?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was part of Britain. The Falklands is part of Britain. The British people down there. Yeah. If I had my youth again, I'd be down there again. And even if the outcome was different, even if I didn't come back, I'd certainly be down there fighting for